The objectives of our time together is here. So this, we are going to understand what the endocrine system is. We will understand hormones and how they play a huge role in maintaining homeostasis. We will talk about the chemical the classes or the classification of hormones and how they work. We will study the anatomy and physiology of the main endocrine glands, pituitary, adrenal, all the main glands. And we'll talk about the hormones that the glands make and what effect all the hormones have. And overall, by the end of this lecture, you will understand how important hormones are for survival. You know, your hormones decide your personality. You know, are you an active person? Or are you like a upbeat, good mood person? It decides your moods also. So let's go over the main functions of the endocrine system. So the endocrine system is a collection of glands that is scattered all over the body. You know, some are found in your cranium, some are found in the thoracic region, some in the abdominal region. So they are scattered all over the body. But these glands produce a very important chemical messenger, which we call as hormones. So the place where it is secreted is usually different from the place where it's going to act upon. It is going to decide reproduction of the human body, growth and development, your immune system, how we maintain homeostasis, how we regulate metabolism, your sleep, your mood. So all the main functions of the human body is controlled by hormones. So these hormones are produced by glands. So these glands will make the hormones and they will secrete it into the extracellular fluid or blood. And the blood will transfer the hormone all over the body. So right now, if you should test your blood, you know, there's up to 30 different hormones that can hang around in your blood. That's why it's such a good diagnostic tool in medicine. So even though all the hormones are found in blood, it can act only on the target organ. And the balance of hormones, even though we don't think much about it because it's kind of slow acting, it's important for optimal health. So the study of hormones and regulating hormones is called endocrinology. So every cell in our body is under the control of either the nervous system or the endocrine system. So how are we going to differentiate these two systems that's going to control all the cells and tissues in our body? The nervous system performs short-term crisis management. It's very quick. If you remember that picture of that hand touching the hot pot, you know, as soon as you touch something hot, the nervous system will ask your biceps to contract and the hand will retrieve away from the heat, right? So that's why it's performed short term. It's very quick. It sends electric signals as action potentials. And we saw the structure of the nerve, how the action potential will travel down the axon. It will release a neurotransmitter, thereby causing an action. So a good analogy is like when I want to talk to you, you know, I can just send you an email. It's very quick. It will only go to you, and then that will evoke a response. On the other hand, the endocrine system regulates long-term metabolic activity. It's slow acting. Here it was action potentials and neurotransmitters. In the endocrine system, it's hormones or chemical messengers that is secreted in order to evoke a response in the cell. And the hormones will work only on the target cells. And a good analogy here is a Facebook posting. You know, you have thousands of people who might look at your Facebook and then you post something, and only the one person who was interested will respond to that posting. It's like a simple analogy to understand the difference between the nervous system and the endocrine system. All right, so here I want you all to master all this stuff here, all the different endocrine organs of the human body and the main hormones that each gland makes. So here's, we can see the hypothalamus, which is the base of your brain. It's like a master gland. It kind of controls several other glands. It produces two main hormones called antidiuretic hormone. You are expected to know the short form and the expanded form of every hormone. So it makes antidiuretic hormone, oxytocin, and regulatory hormones. Pituitary gland is a small gland that hangs off of the hypothalamus here, and it makes about 9 hormones. We'll study each one of them. Across from the pituitary, we have the pineal gland that makes melatonin, very important for sleep. We have the thyroid gland, so you can see the trachea here, and right under the Adam's apple, you can see the butterfly-shaped thyroid gland. So in the anterior, thyroid will secrete different hormones compared to the posterior thyroid. There are small glands called parathyroid glands. They play a huge role in calcium homeostasis and metabolism. Thymus here. So this will disintegrate in adulthood, but it does play a huge role in the immune system. And here you can see the kidneys. So we have 2 kidneys. On top of the kidneys, we see this hat-like gland, and it looks like a little pyramid. It's on top of the kidney, so it's called suprarenal gland. So they produce a whole bunch of hormones. We'll study about that. The other organs like heart, kidneys, digestive tract, and the reproductive system, we'll be studying about those hormones when we study that body system. Classification of hormones. What are the different type of hormones do we have in the human body? So the hormones can either be an amino acid derivative. Here's some examples. Epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine. They are called as catecholamines. It's a class of chemicals. It can be a string of amino acids, which is called peptide. It's a small peptide hormones, and these are the examples of peptide hormones. Thyroid stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone. We're going to study each one in detail. Or it can be an entire protein. Or the hormone can also be steroid or eicosanoids. So most of your sex hormones like testosterone and progesterone are steroid hormones. Why should we understand the classification of hormones? Because their mode of action is different. The signal transduction pathway of proteins and peptides will be very different from steroid hormones. So when a gland makes a hormone and the hormone enters the blood supply, it can circulate freely. So when it's freely circulating, it's quickly absorbed by different tissues in the body. Or sometimes they need a chaperone. So they will travel bound to a carrier protein. And then they will act on the target organ, where the target organ will have the receptors for that certain specific hormone. So this slide, you have to understand what a target cell is. The target cell will respond to the hormone because it has the receptors for the hormone. For example, antidiuretic hormone, right? That is made in your hypothalamus, secreted through your pituitary. It's going to act only on your kidneys. It's not going to act on the ovaries because the ovaries do not have the receptor for the hormone. So here there is a secreting cell, and it looks like the green balls are the hormones. It's going to secrete into the bloodstream, and it's going all over the body. The hormone like floods the entire body, but not all the cells in our body is going to respond to the hormone. only this cell that has a receptor for that green ball will respond to the hormone. So what are the different type of responses you can expect in the target cell? It can change the plasma membrane permeability or the electric state of the cell. It can make some proteins or enzymes. It can activate or inactivate enzymes. It can trigger mitosis. It can trigger gene expression. It can ask the cell to secrete something. So the hormone can trigger a series of very important activity inside the cell. That is why it is so important for homeostasis. So the same thing I told you in the last slide is depicted in a concept map here. You can study this later in detail. So hormones are classified according to its chemical structure. It can either be an amino acid derivative, a peptide, or a lipid. Under amino acid, it can either be a tyrosine derivative or a tryptophan. These are all amino acids. If it is tyrosine, it can make catecholamines, which is epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. So this is the classification of hormones. It's complete, this picture here. Signal transduction pathway. How does the hormone evoke a response in the cell? How do they work? So the receptors for catecholamines or a peptide hormone or eicosanoids are found in the cell membrane. So this is the phospholipid bilayer of a cell. And then the hormone is called as the first messenger. So when the hormone finds the receptor in the target cell, it's going to activate a G protein. So G protein is the bridge from the first messenger to the second messenger. So it's going to convey the message from outside the cell to inside the cell. This series of reactions is called signal transduction pathway. It's also found in your textbook in chapter 3 or 4, I think. And also we studied this in Principles of Biology. So when the hormone activates the G protein in turn will activate the adenylate cyclase that will convert ATP to cyclic ANP. And cyclic ANP now acts as a second messenger that is going to activate enzymes or to evoke a response in a cell. So some of the main things that happens inside a cell is activation of enzymes. Mitosis can be triggered. Gene activation can be triggered. Some kind of secretion can be triggered. So this is called signal transduction pathway, G protein mediated signal transduction pathway. So cyclic ANP is the second messenger. Let's look at another scenario here. When the G protein is activated, the G protein in turn will open some ion channels. So calcium floods into the cell. Calcium will activate calmodulin that will activate enzymes. So this is the mode of action of these hormones on the cell. If the hormone is a steroid, then its mode of action is very different. So thyroid hormones and steroid hormones are able to cross the cell membrane, and they can find their receptors either in the cytoplasm of the cell or inside the nucleus of the cell. So here's a picture of steroid hormones that diffuse through the plasma membrane. They're diffusing through the plasma membrane. They can either find a receptor in the cytoplasm, or the receptor can be found in the nucleoplasm, inside the nucleus. Once inside the nucleus, it can bind to the transcription factors of the DNA, and it can turn a gene on. So the gene will undergo transcription and translation, and it can make proteins. So that's how steroid hormones work. Thyroid hormones are very interesting. See, they find receptors in the mitochondria. And we know mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So this binding of receptors in the mitochondria will elicit ATP production. and a burst of energy in the cell. It can also bind to receptors in the nucleoplasm, and then it can turn a gene on, activate a gene to transcribe and translate and to produce proteins. So this is the signal transduction pathway, which is different for different hormones in our body. So how are hormones regulated in our body? Most of the hormones are regulated by negative feedback loops. If the body detects low hormone levels, then it will release more hormone. And once the balance of hormones is reached, the hormone production will stop. So the hormones are regulated by negative feedback loops. There are three ways hormone production can be activated. Sometimes one hormone can activate another hormone. For example, hormones of the anterior pituitary can trigger your thyroid hormones. Hormones are also made because of changes in ion concentrations in the blood. If receptors pick up too much calcium or too low calcium, and then parathyroid hormone and calcitonin can be triggered. Insulin is triggered in response to glucose levels in the body. Endocrine glands also respond to neural stimuli. It can stimulate a gland. The action potential can stimulate a gland. We saw this when we studied the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, especially your fight or flight response, right? Your body will make epinephrine and norepinephrine in response to a danger situation or stressful situation so that you can run away from danger. So that is the neural stimulation. So endocrine gland is controlled by other hormones or by ion concentration or by a neural stimuli. So the next part of the presentation is all about going over the different glands and the hormones that they make. So here, this is hypothalamus. It is called as it controls all the other endocrine glands. The main function of hypothalamus is homeostasis. See H in hypothalamus, just in your mind, memorize that as it's the seat of homeostasis. It can detect all the changes in the body, and then it will make the appropriate response for the stimuli. So there are three things. So here, this is the brain, and in the base of the brain, you can see the hypothalamus here. They have enlarged that base of the brain into this picture here. So you can see the hypothalamus. There are three main modes of action in the hypothalamus. It is going to make some regulatory hormones that will control. So this is the pituitary gland. So there is a stalk, and then there is this pituitary gland hangs off of the hypothalamus. So it is going to secrete hormones that's going to control and regulate the hormones of your anterior pituitary. It is also going to make its own hormones, antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin, which is secreted through the posterior pituitary. It is also going to control the sympathetic nervous system output in the suprarenal medulla here. That is epinephrine and norepinephrine release. So these are the three main modes of action of the hypothalamus. So here, if you study the structure of the hypothalamus and its connection with the pituitaries, so the pituitary gland is a small gland. It's a pea-sized gland, and then it hangs off of the hypothalamus. The stalk is called infundibulum. The pituitary gland is protected in sella turcica of the sphenoid bone. Let's put some anatomical terminology. So the anterior pituitary is also called adenohypophysis. It has three parts. This region is called pars tuberalis, pars distalis, pars intermedia. The posterior, so this is glandular in nature. The posterior pituitary is neural in nature. That's why it's called neurohypophysis or the posterior lobe. Here it's also called pars nervosa. pars nervosa. So the pituitary gland is a master endocrine gland. It's going to make 9 different hormones. All the endocrine glands have a very rich blood supply. It's very vascular. It makes sense that the hormone, when it's made, has to enter the blood supply. So here in the pituitary, the connection between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, it's called as a hypophyseal portal system. There's a rich supply of blood vessels. So when the hypothalamus regulatory hormone, it can activate the anterior pituitary here. So you can see all the nuclei that's found in the hypothalamus. Nuclei is a group of cell bodies. So you can see the posterior is very neural, anterior is glandular. This is the list of all the hormones, 9 hormones. So the anterior lobe, I'll just go over some of the main, this is a summary slide. So I'll go over some of the hormones that is listed here. So the anterior lobe will secrete hormones only under the command of the hypothalamus. In the pars distalis region, the hormone it makes is called thyroid stimulating hormone. And as the name suggests, the target organ is the thyroid gland. And it will ask the thyroid gland to secrete the thyroid hormones. ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. It will work on the suprarenal cortex. It's the outer part of the adrenal gland. It has a huge hand on glucocorticoid secretion. So that plays a role in glucose homeostasis. Gonadotrophins, they will act on your gonads. Follicle stimulating hormone, act on the ovaries, plays a huge role in menstruation in women. Luteinizing hormone, follicles of the ovaries in female. Prolactin, PRL, target organ is mammary glands, production of milk or lactation after childbirth. Growth hormone, act on all cells. So for growth of cells, protein synthesis, lipid mobilization. In pars intermedia, that region will make melanocyte stimulating hormone. Melanocytes will produce a melanin in your skin. Neurohypophysis or pars nervosa makes antidiuretic hormone. Target organ is kidneys. Here it will ask your kidneys to retain water when you are dehydrated. Oxytocin will plays a role in labor contractions during childbirth. It is also has, they also call it the love hormone or a bonding hormone, oxytocin. So that is secreted through pars nervosa. I just wanted y'all to see the slide because it's very colorful and it kind of repeats the same thing I just said. Kindly know the full form and the short form for all the hormones. Know where it is made and know where the target is and what type of action each of these 9 hormones does. So the hormones have to be in balance. Too much is bad, too little is bad also. So this picture, it's showing an adenoma of the pituitary gland. You can see how swollen and big it is. It looks like a tumor. And we've seen pituitary giant. We've heard of pituitary giants. So this is too much growth hormone during childhood when we still have the epiphyseal plates in your bones. When the same thing happens in adulthood, it's called acromegaly. So what happens is there's no more epiphyseal plates, but there's lots of growth hormone. They will trigger overproduction of the cartilage in your body. So, you can see the enlarged nose and ears and hands. So, there's more examples of disorders of the pituitary gland, but these are the most common. We've seen, this is like the tallest man. He's about like close to 9 feet tall. He's a pituitary giant. And like you can also be a pituitary dwarf, or it can be acromegaly. So moving on to the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland is found right below your voice box here. So you can see the thyroid cartilage here, cricoid cartilage, and right underneath, you can see a very lobular, it's full of lobules, butterfly shaped gland in your throat, in your trachea. So it has two lobes, and the connection is called isthmus. And these are all lobules, and there are special cells that make special hormones. So here in the histology of your thyroid, you can see the thyroid follicle. The cuboidal epithelial cells will make your hormones, T3 and T4 hormones, that is responsible for metabolism in your body and also keeping you warm. T4 is thyroxine, T3 is triiodothyroxine. And there's a special cell called C cell that will make calcitonin, which is very important for maintaining calcium homeostasis in your body. So when there is too much calcium in your blood, it will pack up the calcium in your bones, or it will ask your kidneys to excrete the excess calcium. So here is the homeostasis of the thyroid gland. So when the blood calcium levels increase and homeostasis is disturbed, your hypothalamus will detect it and it will secrete thyroid stimulating hormone through the anterior lobe. So the TSH will trigger T3 and T4 in order to bring down the calcium levels. So the C cells are also called parafollicular cells. They produce calcitonin. What they will do is, in response to high calcium levels, it will pack up calcium in the bones by inhibiting the osteoclast. And it will ask the kidneys to get rid of the calcium by peeing it out. And here's some thyroid disorders you're probably familiar with. Thyroid, a deficiency of the thyroid hormone causes goiter. And this picture of the baby on the right is cretinism. So there's a whole range of symptoms apart from decrease in cognitive function. There's a lot of side effects for hypothyroidism, hypothyroidism. On the back of the thyroid gland, there are these small P-shaped glands. They're called parathyroid glands. There's 4 of them. They're found in the posterior surface of the thyroid gland, and it makes the hormone called parathyroid hormones. If you study the histology of this gland, it will have a special cell called chief cell, and then they will monitor the calcium levels. And then if the calcium levels are very low, they will trigger calcium release from the bones, and they can also ask the kidneys not to get rid of the excess calcium. So this is like a yin and yang. The parathyroid glands and the thyroid glands. One will take care of if there's too much calcitonin, will respond to high levels of calcium. And parathyroid hormone will respond in response to low levels of calcium. And the way they can bring back homeostasis is by asking the kidneys to hold on to calcium or release the calcium from the bones. This is the summary slide of the thyroid gland and the parathyroid gland. So the follicular epithelium will make T3 and T4. They play a huge role in energy metabolism. The C cells make calcitonin. In the parathyroid glands, the chief cells will make the PTH, and they play a role in increasing the calcium level. Adrenal glands, next. So adrenal glands also make a whole range of hormones. So here, let's see where they are found. So right under the diaphragm, you can see the kidneys. And on top of the kidneys, you can see these a pyramid-shaped gland. These are the renal glands, adrenal glands or suprarenal glands, two names. So if you zoom into it, it has a capsule for protection. And then the outer part is called as the cortex and the inner part is called as the medulla. Very similar to the same words that we used for your brain, the cortex and the medulla. So different regions of the cortex and the medulla are going to secrete different hormones. So if you take the cortex, the outermost zone is called zona glomerulosa. It will produce mineralocorticoids. The most important one is aldosterone that will play a role in blood pressure regulation and electrolyte balance. The next zone is zona fasciculata that is going to make glucocorticoids. The main one is cortisol here. They play a role in metabolism and immune system suppression. The third one is zona reticularis. They produce androgens that will act upon the sex glands to form functional sex hormones. In the medulla, there are special cells called chromaffin cells that produce epinephrine, norepinephrine in response to the autonomic nervous system, fight or flight response. And again, there is some disorders, some common disorders. Overproduction of cortisol can lead to Cushing's disease. It is called moon face. There's this fatty deposition on the face and neck, and also like in the back between the scapula. And it has a series of other symptoms too, fatigue and a series of symptoms. It will trigger autoimmune disorders and so forth. This is Addison's disease. This is insufficient production of cortisol. A famous Addisonian is John F. Kennedy, president. So there is this hyperpigmentation and fatigue, and also a series of symptoms connected with that. So most of the tables in this PowerPoint are summary tables. I included them so that you can repeatedly look at it and memorize all the hormones. So here's the histology of the adrenal gland, also called suprarenal gland. And this is the adrenal cortex. The outermost region is called zona glomerulosa that produces mineralocorticoids. Zona fasciculata is glucocorticoids. Reticularis is androgens. And it's in the adrenal medulla that epinephrine and norepinephrine is made. So it's also talking about the effect of the hormone and how the hormone is controlled. Pineal gland also is a very small gland. See, it's found across from the pituitary gland. It's a very small gland. The cells that make up the pineal gland are called pinealocytes. The hormone that they make is melatonin. And melatonin, some people are already taking melatonin supplements because they can't fall asleep at night. So melatonin plays a huge role in the circadian rhythm of your body. So, 11 o'clock rolls in and then you feel sleepy. And then 8 o'clock in the morning, you are awake. That is called as the circadian rhythm of your body that is controlled by melatonin. Pancreas, it's very important. Pancreas, any kind of imbalance, especially insulin can lead to diabetes. So pancreas lies between the inferior border of the stomach and small intestine. It plays a huge role in converting the food that we eat into fuel in our body. It is both the endocrine gland and an exocrine gland. It's also an exocrine gland because it can secrete some alkaline enzymes here in the duodenum part. This is the small intestine. So it produces some digestive enzymes also. But as an endocrine gland, what you have to remember is, if you study the anatomy of the pancreas, again, it is very lobular. You can see it's like a bunch of grapes. This is the head of the pancreas. body of the pancreas and tail of the pancreas. It has a pancreatic duct that runs in the center, and it's full of lobules. In these lobules, in the histology, you can see a structure called islets of Langerhans. So the alpha cells will produce glucagon in response to low sugar levels in your blood, and beta cells will produce insulin in response to high glucose levels in your blood. So this is the picture that depicts the two different states. So it is very important for maintaining blood glucose levels. When the blood glucose level is very high, the pancreas will secrete insulin. So here you've eaten a lot of, or I have eaten a lot of ice cream, and then the blood sugar glucose has increased. So the beta cells in response will make insulin. And what does insulin do? It will increase the rate of transport of glucose into the target cell. It will break down the glucose into ATP to make energy. If there's still more glucose hanging around, it will convert the glucose to glycogen, where it will be stored in your liver and muscle cells. And then it can have other side actions also. So what insulin does, it's going to reduce the blood glucose levels until homeostasis is reached. The opposite of this, when you are on a diet, you forgot to eat breakfast and your blood sugar levels are very low. So what your body will do is the alpha cells will secrete glucagon. What does glucagon do? It will break down the glycogen reserves that's found in the liver and skeletal muscles. It will also break down fat, all of them to make ATP, so that homeostasis is restored. So the pancreas is super important for maintaining blood glucose and ATP levels, because these are vital for survival. So again, this is the summary slide. Alpha cells and beta cells are the ones you need to concentrate for this class. Alpha cells produce glucagon in response to low sugar. Beta cells make insulin in response to high sugar. So all the other endocrine glands we will touch upon when we study the digestive system or your cardiovascular system, reproductive system, and so forth. Your intestines will make all the hormones that is responsible for coordinating digestion. Your kidneys are going to make hormones such as calcitriol, vitamin D for calcium homeostasis, erythropoietin, your RBC. Your testes and your ovaries will make all the sex hormones. Testes will make androgens. So what makes a man is the male hormones, androgens. Ovaries will make estrogens. Your heart will make special hormones called natriuretic peptides that was responsible for maintaining your blood pressure. Thymus will play a role in your immune system. We'll study this again when we study the immune system. Adipose tissue will make hormones called leptin that will play a role for appetite control. So there's 4 more summary slides that you can look at later. And I also posted 2 good videos. I thought they were very interesting. These are crash course in endocrine system.